domains that we associate with obligatory early specialization, like music. Turns out the pattern's often similar. This is research from a world-class music academy, and what I want to draw your attention to is this. The exceptional musicians didn't start spending more time in deliberate practice than the average musicians until their third instrument. They too tended to have a sampling period. Even musicians we think of as famously precocious, like Yo-Yo Ma. He had a sampling period, he just went through it more rapidly than most musicians do. Nonetheless, this research is almost entirely ignored, and much more impactful is the first page of the book Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, where the author recounts assigning her daughter violin. Nobody seems to remember the part later in the book where her daughter turns to her and says, "You picked it, not me," and largely quits. So having seen this sort of surprising pattern in sports and music, I started to wonder about domains that affect even more people, like education. An economist found a natural experiment in the higher ed systems of England and Scotland. In the period he studied, the systems were very similar, except in England, students had to specialize in their mid-teen years to pick a specific course of study to apply to, whereas in Scotland, they could keep trying things in university if they wanted to. And his question was, who wins the trade-off, the early or the late specializers? And what he saw was that the early specializers jump out to an income lead because they have more domain-specific skills. The late specializers get to try more different things, and when they do pick, they have better fit, or what economists call match quality. And so their growth rates are faster. By 6 years out, they erase that income gap. Meanwhile, the early specializers start quitting their career tracks in much higher numbers, essentially because they were made to choose so early that they more often made poor choices. So the late specializers lose in the short term and win in the long run. And I think if we thought about career choice like dating, we might not pressure people to settle down quite so quickly. So this got me interested, seeing this pattern again, in exploring the developmental backgrounds of people whose work I had long admired. Like Duke Ellington, who shunned music lessons as a kid to focus on baseball and painting and drawing. Or Maryam Mirzakhani, who wasn't interested in math as a girl, dreamed of becoming a novelist, and went on to become the first and so far only woman to win the Fields Medal, the most prestigious prize in the world in math. Or Vincent Van Gogh had 5 different careers, each of which he deemed his true calling, before flaming out spectacularly, and in his late 20s picked up a book called The Guide to the ABCs of Drawing. That worked out okay. Claude Shannon was an electrical engineer at the University of Michigan who took a philosophy course just to fulfill a requirement. And in it, he learned about a near-century-old system of logic by which true and false statements could be coded as ones and zeros and solved like math problems. This led to the development of binary code, which underlies all of our digital computers today. Or finally, my own sort of role model, Frances Hesselbein. This is me with her. She took her first professional job at the age of 54 and went on to become the CEO of the Girl Scouts, which she saved. She tripled minority membership, added 130,000 volunteers, and this is one of the proficiency badges that came out of her tenure. It's binary code for girls learning about computers. Today, Frances runs a leadership institute where she works every weekday in Manhattan, and she's only 104, so who knows what's next. We never really hear developmental stories like this, do we? We don't hear about the research that found that Nobel laureate scientists are 22 times more likely to have a hobby outside of work as our typical scientists. We never hear that. Even when the performers or the work is very famous, we don't hear these developmental stories.